Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Underserved, the podcast for the rest of the tech industry. I'm your host, Andrew Gelina. Our guest this week is Ken Pickering, CTO of Hopper. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Andrew. This is great.
So we lucked out with some good weather this winter to get you in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's mysteriously good weather. I always get nervous when it's like late January and we haven't had too many major snowstorms because then it's like, well, what's going to happen in February?
You know it's coming. So Ken, most folks I have on Underserved have a pretty interesting story about what got them excited about technology way back in the day. What was it for you?
My mom could probably tell you this story as well. But when I was like 5, I took apart my record player because I was so intrigued by the concept of like a box that you put a disc on and a needle like replicating sound. So I took it apart and I looked at the pieces and I was definitely unable to get it back together again. But that's always been something that drives me is like understanding how things work, like not being content with just like, well, it's a box that plays music. My parents had a TI computer that hooked up to a television. It had like these big cartridges you would put into it. It's like, and so I'd play some games on that and they had like learning programs and stuff, but they had TI Basic book for it. So when you boot it up without a disk, it would just be like a TI Basic prompt that I would go through the book and I would just write like what the programs were that were defined. And it was really clunky because it was like a terrible interface to type. But I remember being just totally in love with the concept of making a computer do something, like to be able to just type strings of text and see some sort of output or outcome. And then in public school, we had the Apple IIs and I learned like logo, like moving the turtle around the screen. And I got to learn a bunch of the more advanced commands. I could do like crazy colors and amaze people with my programming ability, at like age 8 or something like that. I've always just been in love with that. It's always been a natural driver for me. Been good at math. So I ended up going into electrical engineering in college and ended up switching to computer engineering because I missed programming. I love the hardware side of things, but at the end of the day, I missed that kind of instant gratification of computer programming.
But you can't spell geek without EE.
Oh, I haven't heard that one. That's a good one. I am happy I started down the EE path and I did a lot of like calculus. You did like signals and systems and semiconductor physics and you're like, this is fun, but hardware is a bit of a long run. I'm actually in love with the maker revolution that exists right now because when I was in college, those things really didn't exist as much. It was very hard to make like FPGAs and to actually see something tangible come out of hardware. So I think that's what I most loved about computer programming is it was like easy to do, super low cost, and super fun. So running weird apps and games and stuff for your friends and sending them out. Like those are I remember I wrote an app that was doing, you remember when you used to be able to like surf the web and get paid for it? They used to have these services. You'd run like the ad bar at the top. So we all wrote these bots that would like click the webs for us and we'd get like checks from like all these different web sharing, like web click companies. So like, I'm like, computer programming is great. Like I'm making money, like $100 a month, which is great in college at the time, I guess I just loved it forever.
I did a little bit of hardware hacking when I was in college. I downloaded some schematics and went to Radio Shack and got like the copper plates and ironed on the, little circuit board things and then used this really caustic stuff to remove the excess copper and then putting like IC sockets in everywhere and doing some soldering. I think I made like a DTMF decoder so like it would hear telephone touchtones and tell you what they were.
Yeah.
I hooked it up to a Commodore 64 and it would log them and stuff. It was difficult, and I was definitely at the edge of like what I understood as far as like resistors and transistors and stuff like that. And I was like, programming, like I get it's easier. It comes naturally for me and I can make stuff quickly.
I mean, I always loved robotics. And so I've always loved hybridization. That's actually why I ended up going into computer engineering is I like writing software to make something happen in the real world. So I got really into robotics in college. I ended up working actually for the Department of Defense as my first job. And it was working on like vehicles. So I was working on a lot of software simulations, but working with actual physical like military vehicles, which was kind of cool. But then more and more my career kind of bridged away from that and kind of definitely bridged more into CS and math.
For folks that don't know, as a CTO at Hopper, what does Hopper do and what are some of the things that you've kind of jumped into there?
So Hopper is an OTA, online travel agency, that uses predictive analytics to predict when flight prices will be cheapest. So people can download the app, put in when they want to travel. Hopper will monitor flights for them and send them a push notification based on data science on when they should actually buy a flight. We do hotels now, starting rental cars. So we're kind of exploding into the travel space, but we're most known for our flight prediction stuff.
Seems like you guys are growing pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
What sort of scalability challenges do you have with people? Is it technology? What tends to be the bottleneck and how do you address it?
All the things. I mean, the biggest challenge we've run into at Hopper is scale of everything, right? So to kind of give context, I started at Hopper, it was about a little over a year and a half ago, and it was 18 engineers. I joined. There wasn't much management structure in place. So building that out, and now I think last time I checked, about 118 engineers. So to scale that and change processes and the company itself to accommodate that level of technical talent and the throughput and features and scale, while our user base is also scaling 2 to 4x, and we're targeting of course, 10x this year. So dealing with just the volume of people using our application and then the volume of humans coming into Hopper has been pretty challenging overall. It's one of those things I've been there a year and a half, but it feels like I've been there 3 or 4 years at this point with the time dilation of just all of the things happening.
Yeah, it's like dog years.
Yeah, it's definitely dog years. I feel it. But I mean, it's the good kind of challenging. It's the positive kind of you're growing a business and you're doing well and you're getting the positive signal you need to keep you going and sustaining the growth. For me, it's been transformative. It's definitely the most I've ever done for a company is working at Hopper. And I think a lot of our leadership feels that way. A lot of us are sort of entering uncharted territory with this hyper growth. So, yeah.
So when you're bringing a whole bunch of people in, do you do anything to kind of standardize onboarding or documentation, or how do you make it so that you can bring people in quickly?
So starting onboarding documentation is key, curating interview process to make sure that we, for both cultural and technical reasons, that we're bringing in the right kind of person for Hopper. We've overhauled kind of how we handle culture as a company because I think as you get bigger, defining what cultural values you're pursuing is actually tangibly important. And then it's even more important when you hire people to make sure that they understand what you're striving towards and what you're doing. So we've kind of used Amazon actually as a backdrop for defining our leadership principles because Hopper is nothing if not a two-sided marketplace. So we work with hotels and flight providers. We're not an airline or hotel ourselves, right? So they're our customers. And then we work with the external customers and trying to match the two of them together in a travel ecosystem. So Amazon was a perfect fit for that because you'd be very hard pressed to find a two-sided marketplace in the world as successful and driven as Amazon.
Now, did you guys start in the cloud or did you have to move things there? Was there kind of some re-architecting as part of that?
We are halfway through our GCP migration right now, which is intense at the size of Hopper's business, but it's sort of a no-brainer for us to pursue because we can't add metal fast enough to match our business's growth at this phase. So we started out in Mesos and Marathon. We're going to Kubernetes, Docker, a lot of Scala. We use Finagle, which is a Twitter framework for Scala development. Our data science is largely now done in TensorFlow. So that at the end of the day, why GCP was such a great focus for us is our data stores were heavily HBase derived. So, Bigtable is a corollary there, and using TensorFlow and Kubernetes, which Google, maintains and runs the open source for, so it made GCP a slam dunk for us.
Now, you mentioned a tech stack there that is technically impressive, but I don't know a whole lot of people. It's hard to find Scala engineers, for example.
Yeah.
How do you kind of work with, having a somewhat more arcane tech stack or less mainstream?
Yeah.
How do you attract, retain, build engineers to work on it?
The good news is when you use an arcane tech stack, it tends to actually recruit engineers for you, right? When you're doing functional programming, when you're using Scala, the people that care about Scala will look at your company. But we don't hire people that have functional programming expertise. That's not a requirement Scala. A lot of our onboarding documentation is actually geared towards this is how we do functional Scala at Hopper. And we have a number of actually hands-on tutorials that new hires can follow to get more up to speed with how we do Scala at scale. So I think the main thing for us is we just hire great engineers, and we are a patient company in terms of getting them onboarded, getting them up to speed, getting them productive. If you just limited yourself to great engineers that know Scala, you couldn't build a company on that. It's great engineers that are Go experts. You're not going to find a huge market. There's a ton of people who would love to learn Go, but at the end of the day, you can't really staff a company based on that.
Understood. Now, prior to Hopper, you were at Rue La La, correct?
Yes, I was at Rue La La, which is now the Rue Gilt Group, for quite some time. I started out there running their consumer app division, so the website and mobile apps, and then later became head of engineering there.
My daughter, Caroline, when she heard that I was going to talk to someone that worked at Rue La La, was like, oh, I love that site.
Yeah. It was my first foray into consumer. I loved it. I loved my time there. I think working in flash sales is actually a really interesting technical challenge. Flash sales on Black Friday, there is not a more apocalyptic scenario you could imagine than driving unprecedented load into all of your systems during a 10-minute window. But that's what I loved about some of the engineering challenges there. It was interesting for e-commerce. We did things that not everybody did. We made a product that people love. And that really taught me sort of a love of consumer technology. That's why I ended up going to Hopper, is that working with customers in the open market is really intriguing to me. People don't have to use your app. People don't have to download Rue La La and use it to buy goods and services. They don't have to download Hopper and use Hopper for their flight purchases. So writing a great product that people love is a really intriguing challenge. And I think, both companies were customer focused in that understanding that the lifeblood of their business model is 100% delighting consumers with the application. So I find chasing that as a technologist to be really fulfilling.
How do you kind of marry the UI, UX experience and delighting the consumer with the backend and scalability? And is it two different people? I know everyone wants a full stack engineer if they can find them, but do you find that it's just better to divide and conquer, or how do you handle that?
So when I started Hopper, they hired the most brilliant full stack engineers they could find, right? So Hopper was 100% 18 really great full stack engineers. Yeah, as we've grown, we've had to bring in specialists because at the end of the day, specialists can bring DNA into your technology mix that you might not get from full stack engineers, right? People who've been writing nothing but apps for a decade are going to have a different perception of how an app should be structured, how an app should be made, what best practices are. So yeah, I think what we've largely done is divide in different verticals in terms of we have mobile engineers and infrastructure engineers and backend Scala engineers, data scientists. I think what we like is a full stack mentality and that people don't toss a problem over the fence to be like, well, this is somebody else's problem and I'll just push them a ticket and forget about it. We want people to own what they do, but I think you definitely need specialists to do technology at scale.
And did you have the same sort of philosophy at Inservio, or did you have other lessons learned there?
So at Inservio, it was interesting because it was a hybrid shop at Inservio. So we had tons of different technology in the mix there because it was a bunch of .NET and a bunch of Java. And so they had acquired a company. It was like,
and never the two shall meet.
Yeah, exactly. It was like an East Coast, West Coast thing where where Java engineers don't want to write .NET and .NET engineers don't really want to write Java. But, in a universe where we needed to use both, like even having a bridged ecosystem like that, you focus on services and APIs and ways that the two can interact in a way that actually does make sense. But there too, then there were JavaScript engineers because we did a thick client. So there were definitely a ton of technology ecosystems at play. It's actually where I first learned .NET too. And I will say that I don't hate .NET. Like I'm not going to be one of those open source guys like .NET is terrible. Like I find the fact that they have like a self-contained ecosystem was really surprising to me because I had been mostly in the Java universe my career and I never really delved into what .NET provided. So that was actually interesting to learn in Servio.
Yeah, we do a lot of both, in the consulting that we do. We used to be more .NET. Now I would say it's more Java, less .NET. But, the line's real blurry. I mean, you change like import and using and, it's pretty darn similar.
Oh, yeah. C# is basically Java with like slightly different primitives, right? The thing you get out of it that I like is there's like usually one way to do something. Like .NET has its core libraries that run the gamut. With Java, you're always including like stuff from Apache and all of a sudden you have 185 jars in your class path just to do a moderately complicated app. So I have to say there is a certain sanity to actually just having that kind of solidified pathway and the architecture doing pretty clean separation of concerns. Like I find that .NET sort of forces a style of programming that is scalable and maintainable. So I was actually pleasantly surprised to learn all that after delving into it.
Yeah, you don't see as much in the like open source libraries in the .NET world. There are some, but I think you're right that there's less decision making on, well, what should we use? There's 9 different options we got to bake off and then decide on one and then gamble on its future, if you will.
Yeah, right. Do I want to maintain this in the long term is always a question, yeah.
Will we end up being the open source curators of XLib?
Oh, yeah. And that's, I think, because, Hopper is largely open source frameworks. And I think our future is going more to leveraging shared services where possible, right? Like using Bigtable instead of HDFS, HBase, or using Kubernetes, like hosted Kubernetes as opposed to Mesos and Marathon. Because I think that at the end of the day, one of the lessons I've learned is to just declutter your tech stack as much as possible and focus your engineering team on what matters, right? If it's not helping customers buy travel on Hopper, then you have to question the importance of it. You have to question like whether it's really important that we own it, maintain it, invest in it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't help our customers do anything. Like should we write an APM, like application performance monitoring system? Probably not, right? We shouldn't probably maintain that because at the end of the day, it's not actually driving any value for our customers.
I actually heard from a manager recently we were talking to a big tech company in the area. His outlook was, microservices are sometimes a hammer looking for a nail.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, microservices everything. And you want to apply it and it's interesting and cool and technically challenging, but it may not be the right thing for the job.
It's great when there's 5. It's a lot less great when there's 90, and there's a lot less great when there's like 1,000, right? And that's something we go back, because Hopper is microservices, and that's something we go back and forth on, is how fine-grained are they? Like, if two services are always deployed together and they're dependent on one another, are they microservices at that point, right? Because they're sort of define the logic of what a microservice is. So I think really defining your service boundaries and what actually needs to be a maintainable microservice is a serious question that most microservices companies ask themselves at some point, because of just the complexities around managing so many disparate services and the API contracts and everything else.
They ask themselves right after they get to 90.
Yeah, probably. That's probably a good number. Yeah, exactly.
And the thing that strikes me, though, is that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like, we had this same thing when web services and service-oriented architectures came out. Like, what is too fine-grained? What is the right level of granularity? But even way back in the 90s, like, we were working in an app that had, like, could use this Corba middleware if you wanted in order to have all these services talk to each other. And you had to do this real, like, ugly overhead in order to get the services to actually be remote. Like, you had to write these proxy wrappers and everything. And I was working with my old boss, Al, at the time, and he's like, you know what? Let's use the bridge pattern, actually.
Okay.
The old Gang of Four book.
Yeah.
And let's make like a proxy implementation, and let's make what we call the actual implementation. And let's make it a build time switch so you can just tell it, you know what? Just compile everything together into one big ball. Guess what ended up getting deployed? So when you're not programming / leading teams / figuring out how to scale, sometimes you're punching people in the face.
Yeah. I love to box. I've been boxing for a little under 2 years now. I originally started it as like, what can I do to continue getting healthy? I was doing obstacle course races, like Spartans and Tough Mudders. But I'll be honest, a lot of people get sick doing those or get like weird injuries. And I'm like, all right, like I'm starting to push 40 at this point. I don't think throwing myself over a 10-foot wall into a puddle of mud is for me anymore. So yeah, I started boxing for health, and then I just fell in love with it. So, and actually now I was selected for Haymakers for Hope, which is a charity boxing match in May. So I'm heavily training right now with a group of guys in South Boston. But yeah, it's tough because right now I'm getting up at about 3:55 in the morning to drive into the boxing gym, which is not ideal. But I do think that actually doing something physical actually helps balance my work-life balance out quite a bit, because I think it's something I can do that's for me. No one actually really cares where I am at 4 o'clock in the morning unless there's really something terrible going on at work. It's something I can do for myself and get something physical done. It helps manage my stress levels. So
now, is there a mick? Like, do you have to ask him to cut you? Like, does he give you negative reinforcement? How does this work?
There is a Nick, actually, who's my trainer, and he is the king of the neg, I think. Like, I get a lot of negative reinforcement, and I wish it didn't work so well on me. Like, I there's a part of me that's just, I hate that it works so well on me, where it's like, you're just the worst box I've ever seen. I'm like, no, I'm not, and I try hard. I'm like, this shouldn't work. You're a grown man, Ken, you're okay. But no, like, I think a lot of boxing is, they use negative reinforcement as a motivator. But yeah, no, Nick is great. He's helping train me for Haymakers, and he's 11-0 with guys right now. So I feel like I'm in good hands going into the fight. So yeah.
Haymakers for Hope is one of the links that we will definitely put in our show notes. And the show notes for this show are available at our website. That URL is underserved.libsyn.com. That's underserved.libsyn.com. We'll have a link to Ken's match. You'll be able to donate if you want to help support him in Haymakers for Hope, and also on some of the other topics that we talked about here. We're also looking for folks to participate and give us feedback. So if you are interested in being a guest on the show, if you want to comment on a previous show, you can email us at underserved@syrinx.com. That's underserved@syrinx.com. Underserved is brought to you by Syrinx, the developer-founded, developer-run software consulting company. Do your kids want to see you at more of their soccer games? Does your daughter want you to come to her dance recital? Does your son want you to help him with his homework, then maybe watch a show together? Of course they do. But it's getting harder and harder for you to have family time because you have to put in so many hours at the office to get your mountain of software projects completed and out the door. And you can't hire people fast enough in such a tight job market to help you catch up. If this is you, then it's time to call Syrinx. We have consultants who can slot into your team immediately to make a positive impact on your schedule. We help you ship software on time and on budget. And we help you get back time to do the important things in life, like having a life. Let us get started today. You could reach us at 888-579-7469, option 1. That number again is 888 579-7469, option 1. Or you can email us at info@syrinx.com. That is info@syrinx.com. More time with your family, brought to you by Syrinx. So what's it like when you're getting in the ring? Like, what goes through your head when you're stepping through the ropes? Is there a flip of a switch? What happens?
It's terrifying. I've done one sort of real fight at this point. It was they call it a developmental match. About 100 people there probably watching it, and you're just nerves the entire time because at the end of the day, you're going to be in a ring with another human being who's going to try to hit you in the face as hard as he can. And that's an unnatural scenario, I think, for a human being to enter themselves in. Like I consider myself, I guess, normal in the regard of I don't really like getting hit in the face. That's not a driver for me. It's terrifying sometimes. So yeah, I think walking up to the ring and then crossing into the ropes is really nerve-wracking. And a lot of it is actually like adrenaline management, like not letting it get to you so much. You're not thinking about all the people watching you or what's going on. And the thing I've been working on the most is when the bell rings, just focusing on the actual match at hand, not worrying too much or overthinking everything about it. Like I think that's where the training kicks in, is like it's all more about reflex and responding and not trying to get yourself psyched out or overthink. I mean, one of the interesting things about boxing is even if you win, you're going to get hit, and embracing that and just absorbing that, to just know like you're going to get hit. The best thing you can do is if you get hit, to recover and to follow your game plan and keep pushing forward. I think that's one of the hardest things I've had to learn about boxing, especially with sparring, is when someone comes at you with intent to hit you in the face, your first reaction is to back away. Like your natural human instinct is to literally just get away from this person that's doing this to you. And boxing is about remaining calm and stepping into it, rolling with the punch and going closer to that person. And I think that was by far and away the largest mental block I had to get over, was just to go into a situation that was somewhat unsafe, but to trust myself and my instincts and everything else. So, yeah.
It almost sounds like a motivational speaker. Like you can't back away. You got to lean into it.
Yeah.
You got to go against your instincts and do the uncomfortable thing in order to get ahead and get where you want.
At Rulala, our CEO, Mark, was always like, boxing is a great metaphor for entrepreneurship, and I'm like, yes, probably, There's like the Rocky quote from one of the Rocky movies. He's like, it's like about life. And, one of the things I absorb it is it's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. I actually think that I do take some of those lessons into being a leader, because I don't think of my value as like leading people when things are going well. I think it's actually when something absolutely goes wrong and you have to manage the way out of it. I think that's where leadership emerges. And I guess maybe psychologically under the covers, there is an aspect of boxing that resonates with that for me, which is it's easy if you're winning and there's no adversary, there's no adversarial conflict. It's what you do with adversarial conflict that actually defines who you are.
I think a lot of folks in the technology area, if they are thrust into a management position or get promoted, or it's just kind of where they end up in their career, that when that conflict can come at them, the same sort of human instinct kicks in. Like, I want to back away from this. I don't like this. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to lean into it.
Yeah.
And it definitely takes some getting used to.
I mean, I think the first time I had to have an uncomfortable conversation with another human being in a management capacity was like one of the worst moments of my life, because you're sweating. You don't want to do it. It's super uncomfortable. Having to look somebody in the eye and be like, you're not doing well and we're going to part ways is one of the hardest things I've had to do to another human being. I've done startups for a while, so having to execute like a massive layoff of friends, people you've worked with for years is one of the definite hardest things I've ever had to undergo. But at the end of the day, like getting through that, I really feel like that's where you cut your leadership teeth, is not hiring people and having everything go great, but actually managing performance and actually having to do things that are hard. If you have any amount of empathy and you're not a sociopath, it's definitely hard for a human being to do.
So when you come out of the boxing training in the morning, do you come in work looking like Ed Norton in Fight Club and like, I fell down some stairs?
Yeah, my biggest threat, and this hasn't happened yet, but I call it being raccoon, which is when you break your nose and you get the two black eyes. Like walking into work like that would be absolutely mortifying. Like I've been clear that I've sort of told work at our board, by terms, I'm in a board meeting and I just look like a total mess, But yeah, no, work is actually super supportive of this. So thankfully, I'm pretty transparent about my morning activities. But no, there is always I don't want to get my face messed up. Like I'm terrified of that.
So do you do anything with your kids in order to kind of get them interested in technology, the next generation?
Yeah. Well, they're both into music, which is great, because I do think there are bridges between technology and music. I was a musician as a kid growing up, loved it.
What'd you play?
Violin, trumpet, and then I switched to bass and drums in college.
Oh.
sing. Programming was actually like a side gig till my music career took off. But, it ended up sticking. So I'm happy. I'm happy with the path I chose. But we actually just put a piano in for them. But like one of the coolest things I've gotten for my oldest daughter is the Harry Potter, like program your wand kit. Like it was like a big thing around Christmas this year. But basically it's like Scratch and they have like an embedded wand with an accelerometer and stuff in it, but you can like code behaviors and then do stuff with the wand and stuff happens on the computer screen, which is like an awesome way to teach kids how to program, especially if they're like super Harry Potter nerds, like it's a fantastic way to bring some of that thrill of like, I wrote this and things happened to a kid's. My youngest, not so much yet, but my oldest is definitely really starting to show like, they're starting to really be interested. They both love Legos, which is great because I love Legos. I don't know anybody who doesn't love Legos. So yeah.
So actually, both in the travel industry, Steve Coffer, the first season 2 episode, talks about Legos being one of his kind of formative, forays into building things before he got into programming.
My parents loved that I loved Legos because I could just get up on Saturday morning and I would just build stuff. I had the primary color Legos. You had like the blue and the red and the yellow and just build like these ugly looking spaceships or something like that. But now with the kits, it's so impressive, like all the different kits and everything. And my older daughter loves building like the big Harry Potter castles. Like she's starting to do those, which are really impressive. My wife actually got into Legos this year. She built like the gingerbread house for Christmas. So we had it at our mansion. So yeah, I think we're rapidly becoming a more Lego-oriented family, which is a lot of fun.
I remember when, we had like probably Duplos when you're real young, then like the primary color Legos. Then when they had the space ones, when those came out, those were the coveted ones. My brother and my cousin and I would all get together and either collaborate or fight over, who got what Legos and what we were going to build together.
The night ones were cool too. And they started having like the horses and stuff like that. They had all like now it's like everything. Now there's Marvel and I love Star Wars. So Star Wars Legos are great. My wife bought me a giant Yoda, like the Yoda one to build. I haven't built it yet, but it's like sitting in the corner waiting for me to have like a few spare hours. So
one of my daughters really likes the Legos, and they've made like this Lego Friends, I think they call it.
Okay.
And it seems kind of aimed at younger girls, and they build like this whole immersive environment that they can then do pretend with. I'm just waiting for her to get into like stop motion video with it or something.
Oh man. Yes. I love the creativity of it because they'll play with the Lego sets afterwards. It's great to see. And I like to see them build. Like I consider myself like someone who just likes to build anything, whether it's companies or organizations or code or hardware. So it's great to see. And that's something I can share with my daughters, which is great. Like one of the things that you're always worried about as a parent, I think, is like, am I going to have anything in common with these kids? Are they going to like the same stuff that I like? Because otherwise being a parent might be terrible. But, to see those shared interests arise and having something you can really dig into and share your love of something with a child is phenomenal.
You guys do any gaming together, like video games or?
Yeah, Ada loves Minecraft. Oh, I love Minecraft too. So I'm teaching her how to play Minecraft and get more involved in that universe. I do a lot of like really kind of more hardcore strategy gaming and a role-playing gaming type stuff like Witcher. I started just playing RimWorld, which is fantastic. But yeah, we do board games too. Like I think doing board games and puzzle games is a lot of fun. We have tons of board games. Usually that's what I will buy them for a birthday gift. I'll run out and try to find a cool board game we can play together. So we have they're all derivations of kind of probably games like memory games that are themed in a certain way but gaming is a pretty big part of what we do. I was amazed. They got Don't Break the Ice, which was a game that was actually around when I was a kid. To watch them play that for hours, it's really cool to watch because it's like, wow, this is not a super complex game that it's been around forever that they still drive joy out of. And actually, we just signed Ada up for Chess Wizards. She's starting to get into chess. So I started teaching her how to play chess, and that's been a lot of fun too because I haven't played chess in a long time. So it's kind of fun to play it with your daughter and teach her the ins and outs of chess.
I never got any good at it. I knew like the sucker's mate opening and that was about it.
Never great at it. I had friends who were like deep into chess. I learned an appreciation for it and I knew a couple things, but no, I was never a wizard at it. I think it's one of those cool games that it has like a lot of different permutations. Like I have a friend who's deep into Go, which I never got into, but I've always wanted to because I think those games are really kind of cool and interesting with all the different permutations. And I mean, there's a reason that it's when they do like man versus machine, it's chess, right? Because I think it is one of those games that there are 1,000 ways to execute a game. So it's pretty cool.
The other one they've been doing is poker.
Okay.
And now the AIs are really starting to beat up on the top few.
Oh, no. Do we have nothing left?
So when you were mentioning the Harry Potter wand, the thing that occurred to me is like I think about us with our gateway into programming. Like we saw something on the screen, thought that was cool, but now they have something in the actual physical world, an IoT device, if you will.
Yeah.
They're doing an integration with the computer and they get to see that. And that must be super exciting to be a kid and see that come to life.
I can't imagine. I think about would have thought of like smartphones as a kid and just that they're sorcery. Like there's just like, I mean, even when I was going into college, it's like if I had a Pentium, like that was cool, right? Like I could run a video game on this thing that isn't like big giant blocks of pixels dancing back and forth. But I mean, it's the acceleration of technology and that's what I love about the kind of the maker universe, that you can build these like circuits really cheaply and easily now, and that it does make like accelerometers accessible. Like I wonder what they'll think and I wonder what's coming, right? Because, with the advent of AI and programming tools getting much more accessible and easy to use, like I think I don't know, I keep on thinking we're at an inflection point, and then it keeps on astounding me that we're not, that things keep on accelerating even faster than I imagined. So, yeah.
So to stay fit and help make weight, we were talking ahead of time, you do intermittent fasting.
I do intermittent fasting. Yes, it's what is it, 16-8 rotation right now. So I eat between 12 and 8 every day. Yeah.
All 7 days, no days off.
No days off. Yeah. Breakfast is the easiest thing to drop for me. I work out and usually that kills some of the hunger. And then, I drink coffee. I'm not like a no food, no water, like no drinks type person. So I do coffee and water. And I get used to it. I don't know if I could do like the whole day fasting, because a lot of people do like the whole, like the 1 day or the 3-day fast. I don't think I could do that. I'm happy with the cadence, and I think it does help me like maintain weight and stuff like that. So been a big fan of it. Yeah.
Been doing it a little over a year. I got down 30 pounds.
Wow. Okay.
And then back up 10 with the holidays and everything.
Yeah.
But since the first of the year, I've fooled around with it a little, tried tweaking one parameter at a time to see what works well. And it seems like the sweet spot is get up, drink some water, walk the dogs, couple cups of coffee in the morning, more water, just water.
Yeah.
And then don't break the fast until afternoon. And then I've tried 16-8, 7 days a week for a while. Then I started trying to shorten my window.
Okay.
To make it like only 5 or 6 hours worth of time that I'm allowed to eat.
Wow.
And then my oldest daughter's vegan, so I've been trying to steer more that way than meat eating.
Okay.
Or binging on, 3/4 of a large pizza once. Once I break the fast.
Yeah. I have a bunch of friends who are into like endurance sports that swear by the veganism thing. I eat paleo, so it's like vegetables and meat, and I try to do lower carb stuff. That does it for me. Like eating out, if you're doing any kind of like vegan or any kind of restrictive diet, is always the nightmare, which is why work travel is always terrifying for me. Like trying to find a restaurant in a place where I can probably get something that doesn't completely throw me over the edge. Because I'm one of those people, if it's like, all right, fine, I'm having 4 slices of pizza and I just blow it. I might have beer too now,
Oh, the alcohol is the one.
Oh, yeah.
Having the window kind of helps, because if your window ends at 8, then at like 8:30, you're like, oh, I can have a beer. No, I can't.
Yeah, it forces you to behave. That's why 8 o'clock is a good cutoff, because at that point, nothing. I'm not going to make good food or drink decisions after 8 o'clock at night.
No, or after 2 beers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's actually the hardest part about the boxing trade, is that I love craft beer. Like I am a huge craft beer guy. And my friend sent me a text this week like, hey, I'm going to Treehouse. Can I pick you up anything? I'm like, no.
No, you cannot.
You could, I'm throwing a big Super Bowl party. I'm like, I will pay for some of the beer to be at my house for the Super Bowl party, but I can't drink any of it.
All right, favorite Treehouse beers, if you were to imbibe?
Oh, goodness. That's a tough call. I'm blanking on the name of their black IPA that I had recently that was really good.
I like pretty much all their doubles.
The doubles are phenomenal. I don't want to say I stick to doubles, because I feel like it's a good bang for my buck with drinking Treehouse beer, but no.
There was green, there was haze. There was this one, I think it was called 55, that was good for a while. You pretty much can't go wrong. Although I got the stouts from there, which are wicked expensive. They're like, I don't know, 10 or 15 bucks a bottle. And I figured out afterwards that they contain actual coffee.
Yeah.
Because I was up at
midnight,
just at midnight. Why am I so wired? And there was a bunch of coffee in the stouts. So I tend to stick to the doubles.
Usually my standard is like Julius and Hayes. Usually I get the Julius. That's the flagship. It was the first one I had, and I sort of fell in love with Treehouse at that point. And then Hayes is just a really well-balanced double IPA. And I do a bunch of Trillium too, because it's easier to get because I work in Boston.
Yep.
I actually got their metal series, which was really cool, because there's there's heavy metal, and they did black metal and death metal around like the holiday season, which were like their black IPA and their triple IPA, which were really good too. So yeah, we're really spoiled with the IPA scene in New England, I have to say. Like between Treehouse and Trillium, it's like, kid in a candy store.
Yeah, it has gotten a lot better. My sister and brother would get me like Pliny the Elder from California, and I was like, oh man, like that's the one and only. But now the New England boys can give them a run for their money.
Absolutely. I feel like a bit of a snob when I'm like, well, Alchemist. I mean, Heady Topper is great, but I remember when Heady Topper was the best thing I ever had too, And so I'm just like, this IPA bubble that exists right now has spoiled me. I'm totally spoiled. And I feel bad for a lot of my friends that are not in the IPA, because you go to a beer and wine store and it's 70% IPA these days.
Yeah.
So if you're in like a Kolsch, it's like, we don't do much Kolsch pioneering here in New England. So
around Oktoberfest, there's a place called Black Hat Brew Works in Bridgewater.
Okay.
They make an Oktoberfest style beer that is so good. It's like the ones that you see them like with the mass 1 liter mugs
at
Oktoberfest in Germany. And that's so good. I have it's called a U-keg. It's like a gallon keg with CO2 thing in the top. So it'll stay fresh for 2 weeks and pour like it's on tap.
Oh, nice.
I'm over there all the time in like October. Like, all right, got any more?
Oh, man. I'll have to try. I haven't been to that brewery yet, so I'll have to try that. And luckily, I won't be trading in October, or September. It'll be great.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
Well, Ken, thank you very much for coming down today. We appreciate you sharing your stories and lessons learned.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And we wish you the best of luck with your Haymakers for Hope.
Thank you. I will need all the luck in the universe to get through this, I think, but I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, we'll all be pulling for you in May, everyone from Underserved.